All right, guys, so we just finished off our first BFL of the year out on the Chesapeake Bay. Never been out there before, only got a few days of practice in, and we were able to sack up enough weight during a super tough tournament for a 9th place finish. My first top 10 out here with MLF. Super excited to start the first tournament of the year off with that. Wanted to jump into a little bit of practice, tell you guys how that went, a couple things on the water. Obviously want to get into how tournament day went and how we finished up 9th. So practice was different for me, so I live decently close to the bay. I didn't even realize that there was that good of fishing out there. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to, kind of isolate and break it up into areas that way I wasn't fishing. Because, dude, there's so much water out there. There's 8 to 10 rivers, you got the Susquehanna, there is literally so much area. So first day of practice, what I wanted to do is I wanted to get down on an area that I'd heard was pretty good, but had obviously, never fished like the other one. So I started out down on the Sassafras, looked some things up. I'm sure you guys have heard of Turners and Lloyds, and there was one more it's pretty far into the back of that. But I ended up fishing really good tides, really good areas, probably six or so hours, and didn't even get a bite. So I was like, all right, we're gonna have to scratch this. Water temperature was great. Clarity was good enough to be able to be fishing around and getting a few bites for the day if we were in the area that the fish were eating. So we just must not have been in the right area. So what I did at the end of the day is I ran up to the flats and tried to find, some warm water with grass, a good area that I thought fish would be, pushing bait up in, maybe schooling early, something. So what I was able to find, I didn't catch a bass, but I did catch a catfish there. I was able to find one good area in the flats that I did like. I just didn't think the tide was right, didn't think that, the fish were really feeding up there at the time. So keeping that in the back of my head, that was pretty much the finish of my practice of day one. Ended up having to run back down to the Sassafras to launch it, or to pull the boat out of Duffy Creek is where we ended up launching. So day two, what we ended up doing for day two of practice is I went back out to that area in the flats that I had found and just tried to hit it during different times of the tide to see if that was the deal. And if you guys fish tidal, Potomac River, whatever, that's the deal. You could be at the best spot on the river, and if that tide's not right, you could literally catch nothing. And that tide flips over, and it's like a dinner bell swings on, like dinner bell dings, and it is on, man. So when I came back to that area, I liked what was going on. There was a little bit more water, a little bit more current pulling through there at the time, and I was able to actually, get a few bites. Ended up hooking into a really, really big one that I had to jump off because there was a boat driving really close by me, which is definitely a thing. If you guys fish out there on the flats and you thought you fished community holes before, I thought I had fished community holes before. I'd never in my life fished a community hole like this. It was insane. So caught a real big one out there, hooked him really well, and what I ended up having to do, he's probably like five something, just ended up having to open the bail while this guy drives by. I'm sitting there giving the old, I'm stuck, Closed the bail, and when I went to go reel it up, there was nothing there. So that was fine. Ended up finding that area. We got out of there. That was the second time I'd been there. I thought it was a good area, just needed that tide to get right, needed a little bit more water in there. And we figured a little something out. So what I did the rest of the day was I tried to run new stuff and just figure out what was going on out there, figure out where these fish were biting and where they were fired up at. And I was able to get a couple things together on some deep rock, some stuff up there, up toward the Susquehanna Bridge, like the dam area back there. I was able to find some things, but nothing I really thought, I was gonna be able to put a solid day of fishing together. Nothing big. I only caught one keeper, another short, really fat fish, but just, I saw a lot of fish, but just wasn't able to get them to fire up. So that was the end of day two. Wanted to get out there for another day because, we hadn't been out there before ever. And it's like I said, it's a huge place. And to this time, I think I had caught, maybe like 2 keeper bass and jumped off that real big one, a couple catfish, couple shorts. I was starting to put a few things together, but really needed, in my eyes, kind of like a contingency plan should weather come in or something like that. So Day 3 of practice, what I ended up doing was I ended up staying up in the Northeast River the entire day. You know, what I wanted to do was I just really wanted to figure some things out up there and, you know, make sure that if weather came in, because we were supposed to have a really bad storm come in, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to fish my stuff on the flats. You know, if weather came in, I would have some protected areas, protected shorelines, areas that I could go and actually be productive fishing. Because as you guys know, that's a huge thing as well. You know, it's gonna be really hard to fish 3-foot waves out on the flats if that's the only thing I have. So ended up sticking up in the Northeast River basically the whole day and found some good fish. I'll run through some clips here. Ended up sticking a really nice 3.5 on a flipping bait. Was able to go through and put a few more things together. I didn't set the hook on anything. Got thumped by a couple of decent fish, you know, so I thought if I needed to do this, this is something that I could do. So that was my practice. You know, we were able to figure some things out. I had found that I had that one area. I kind of tried to put a contingency plan for myself together. You know, I was able to get a few bites, a couple bites I thought were big. But, you know, going into the tournament, I wasn't, you know, because I didn't have a whole lot of anything to judge it off of. You know, I'm not fishing with anybody out here. I don't have a buddy really who fishes the Northeast BFLs with me. So I wasn't sure, especially me being the first time that I'd fished out there, if it was even, you know, if it was fishing this tough, if it was I hadn't found the right spot at the right tide, or if I just didn't have it together out there or not. I had no idea. You know, I knew I had one area where there was a good amount of decent sized fish using. We're just gonna have to, one, hope we could fish it that day, and two, hope that they were there eating. So let's get out of practice. Let's jump on over to the tournament. The tournament morning was pretty crazy. It was supposed to be blowing like 20-mile-an-hour winds. It was supposed to be wild rain. It was supposed to be ridiculous. That storm ended up blowing through the night before. We got out there that morning, and I want to say we had maybe like 15 to 17-mile-an-hour winds till, I don't know, 9 o'clock. So my thought is, hey man, this storm blew through, my pressure's good, like my bite wasn't great, and I'm a power fisherman. Like I like to put something in my hand and chuck and wind. So when that pressure dropped out on me, and the pressure had been high and really crappy weather for fishing, I mean, you had to fish slow, and it's not how we wanted to do it that morning. So that pressure was right, everything was looking good. I was like, dude, we know where we're starting. So made the decision to get out there and run, you know, to my area in the flats that I had found those fish, you know, and really just decided to stick there and fish it. So when we got there in the morning, I guess it was maybe like 2 footers or so. I mean, they weren't quite coming over the bow, but we were hitting to just barely them, you know, barely not coming over the bow. So it was really rough in the morning. I knew the tide wasn't right, but I knew that if I stuck it out, I could maybe get one of the better sized fish that was in the area, you know, while that tide was still getting right. So that didn't end up happening. We launched out, we were boat number 28. I would say, you know, we were out of there pretty quick. So launch was at 6:30. We were probably like 6:45, maybe we were on our spot, you know, 6:50 or so. And we didn't get a bite until 9:30. And the bite that I got at 9:30 was a short. So, you know, we fished for 3 hours or so and literally didn't even have a bite. But I knew that that was the deal at this spot. The tide just had to get right. So grinded it out. I guess maybe 20 minutes or so go by after I catch that short, and I'm looking around, I'm looking at the grass, I'm looking at how things are doing, I'm checking the tide, and it's about to get right. So end up making another couple casts out and hook right into a 3.5 pounder. That's first keeper of the day. Bring it into the boat, and I tell my co-owner, I'm like, dude, it's about to fire up. Because I know, man, when you get on these tidal areas, sometimes you just gotta wait for things to get right. Like I said, dude, a dinner bell rings and it just turns on. So something happened, pressure starts changing. We didn't get a bite for, I guess, another 40 minutes or so. Things just changed. You know, the weather was pretty nasty. It started to calm out. You know, the wind kind of went away. Humidity started getting higher. The sun started looking like it wanted to peek out from behind the clouds. And something in me just said, dude, go into that box and pull out the biggest. Tell my co-angler, I'm like, dude, man, I think this might be a striper, right? Because, dude, it waffled. I mean, dude, it slammed it. So I'm reeling it in, and I'm fighting it because you never know, right? It could just be a real big bass. And I see gills flare, I see a mouth come up, shake on the surface, and I'm like, dude, get the net. I'm reeling him in, and I finally get him up to the boat, and he goes, that one might be 15. And I was like, might be 15, baby, might be 5 pounds. Oh, dude, so that was awesome. That was fish number 2. My co-angler ended up tying a jerkbait on and flicks it out the back, dude, and he slams almost a 5-pounder right behind me. That's another nice, great big one. So then that gets me turning a little bit. You know, the weather had kind of slicked off for the bait that I was throwing. Everybody and their mother around me was throwing a chatterbait. I had 2 of them tied up. I mean, love the chatterbait, but it just wasn't working that day. So I would go in the box and I tie up a bait that I had actually just bought down for the Potomac River, and tied up this bait and proceeded to put 2 more good ones. One just under 3 and then one 2 3/4 in the boat in the next, I don't know, maybe like hour and a half, 2 hours. And that was my 4 fish, man. I tried so hard to get one more. Like I said, we caught that short earlier, end up sticking into a big old catfish during the day too. I mean, we had all the boats around were watching. I'm sitting there thinking it's a big bass, because dude, you know, a catfish, they want to dig. Well, I had to bring this thing's head down twice because he come up, you know, I'm thinking he's a bass coming up trying to shake his head. Get him to the boat, it's a dang catfish. But so we ended up literally finishing out the area that day right there. We started there and finished. I mean, it was literally the size of a Walmart parking lot that we started in, fished all day. I think at one point I did move like 300 yards down to check something, but the Susquehanna they must have just been rolling water out of there. And yeah, I wasn't able to really put anything together over there because it was just straight chocolate milk. So ended up finishing the area out where I started, get back to the weigh-in.
Michael Gardner's coming up here. He's from Townsend, Delaware. Fishing on the motor side. He's got 4 in the back. How you doing, buddy? Couldn't get one more. But you got 4 that's going to weigh 12 pounds, 6 ounces, 4 good ones. Good job, man. That does move you into first place right now. You're all right with that? Well, if you wasn't, I'd have a problem. You bet. Yeah, you got some people out there you better hold them up for. See what happens. All right.
At 12-6 with 4 fish, I was leading the event for quite some time. But I knew that those guys that were out there that had that later boat launch, who had more time with that tide roll, and it was getting good, definitely would have brought, you know, the bigger winning fish in. I just needed a couple of hard cover spots, you know, places that I felt confident running and pulling a keeper-sized fish out of, you know, within 20 to 30 minutes of staying there. I just didn't have anything like that, didn't have anything that I felt confident enough to run. You know, I was confident in my fishing abilities, confident that I could get these fish and I could get enough of them to bite on game day to do it. I knew that I had the baits selected for the bigger ones, and that's how it worked out. So I was able to put 4 good fish in the boat on that Saturday morning and bring in 12.5 pounds to put me at 9th place for my first BFL tournament of the year. That's obviously got us sitting in 9th place for the division. Our next one, our next BFL is out on Lake Champlain. I think it's like July 22nd or July 20 something. But we do have a Toyota Series on Lake Champlain coming up here June 22nd. So super excited. I love Lake Champlain. Me and my fiance are actually getting out there, I think in another week, to get up there for a few days and go fish it. Absolutely love it up there. Great place. Super, super awesome smallmouth fishery. But that's today's tournament recap video. If you guys have any questions, obviously hit me down below in the comments. Would love to hear from you guys. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, like the video, absolutely share it with your buddies, share it with your friends. We'll see what happens this year. I'm super excited to get out there, maybe see some of you guys at the weigh-ins. And remember, I'm Mike G. This is Largemouth Blast, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace!